The Lives of the Saints by the Reverend Alban Butler, taken from the 4th edition, published in 1954. August 18th, St. Helen, Empress. We are assured by the unanimous tradition of our English historians that this holy Empress was a native of our island. Leland, the most diligent searcher of our antiquities, says Helen was the only daughter of King Coelius, who lived in constant amity with the Romans and held of them his sovereignty. The Glastonbury historian says the same. Henry of Huntingdon tells us that this was the King Chell who first built walls around the city of Colchester, and beautified it so much that it derives from him its name. That town has for several ages boasted that it gave birth to this great empress, and the inhabitants, to testify their veneration for her memory, take for the arms of the town, in remembrance of the cross which she discovered, a knotty cross between 4 crowns, as Camden takes notice. Though Mr. Drake will have it that she was rather born at York, Constantius, at that time only a private officer in the army, had the happiness to make her his first wife, and had by her Constantine, his eldest son, who, as all agree, had his first education under her watchful eye. Constantine, from his first accession to the throne, by his edicts, forbade the Christians to be molested on account of their religion. Fluctuating what deity to invoke before his battle with Maxentius, he was at length inspired to address himself to the true God, and encouraged by miraculous visions. From that time he published frequent edicts in favor of the Christian faith, built stately churches, munificently adorned altars, and delighted much in the conversations of bishops, whom he often admitted to his table, notwithstanding the meanness of their outward appearance. Baronius says that the same year in which he vanquished Maxentius, he gave to the Bishop of Rome the imperial Lateran palace. In the following year, 313, Pope Melchiades held in it a synod in the apartment of Fausta, the wife of Constantine, and accordingly we find the popes in possession of it in the 4th century. We may judge of this emperor's liberality to the bishops for the use of the church, and pour from his letter to Cecilian, Bishop of Carthage, in which he sent him in order to receive from his chief treasurer of Africa 3,000 purses, which amounted to above 20,000 pounds sterling, adding that if he found anything more wanting, he should without difficulty demand it of his treasurer, who had from him in order to give him without delay whatever sum he should require. He distributed alms abundantly among the poor of all kinds, even among the pagans. Those who were fallen from a better condition he assisted after a more generous manner, giving land to some and places to others. He was particularly careful of orphans and widows, and gave portions to virgins. It appears from Eusebius that St. Helen was not converted to the faith with her son till after his miraculous victory, but so perfect was her conversion that she embraced all the heroic practices of Christian perfection, especially the virtues of piety and almsdeeds, in which she doubtless was a great spur to the emperor. Her dutiful son always honored and respected her, forgetting in her regard that he was the emperor of the world, unless to employ his power in serving her. He caused her to be proclaimed Augusta, or Empress, in his armies, and through all the provinces of his empire, and medals to be struck in her honor, in which she is called Flavia Julia Helena. She was advanced in years before she knew Christ, but her fervor and zeal were such as to make her retrieve the time lost in ignorance, and God prolonged her life yet many years to edify by her example the church which her son labored to exalt by his authority. Rufinus calls her faith and holy zeal incomparable, and she kindled the same fire in the hearts of the Romans, as St. Gregory the Great assures us. Forgetting her dignity, she assisted in the churches amidst the people in modest and plain attire, and to attend at the divine office was her greatest delight. Though mistress of the treasure of the empire, she only made use of them in liberalities and alms. She distributed her charities with profusion wherever she came, and was the common mother of the indigent and distressed. She built churches and enriched them with precious vessels and ornaments. Licinius in the east became jealous of Constantine's prosperity, and attacked him by various hostilities. The armies of Licinius were more numerous, and he threatened that if his gods gave him victory, as his soothsayers and magicians pretended unanimously to foretell him, he would exterminate their enemies. Constantine prepared himself before the days of each battle by prayer, fasting, and retirement, and caused the ensign, called the Imperial Libarum, in which were the effigies of the cross, to be carried before his army. In battle, victory everywhere followed this chief standard so visibly that Licinius, making a second stand near Chalcedon, ordered his soldiers to make no attacks on the side where the great standard of the cross was, nor to look towards it, confessing that it was fatal to him. He was first vanquished near Adrianople, where he left almost 34,000 dead upon the spot in July 324, and in a second battle near Chalcedon, in which out of 130,000 men, scarce 3,000 escaped. Licinius fell into the hands of the conqueror, who spared his life and sent him to Thessalonica, where, upon information that he was attempting to raise new disturbances, he ordered him to be strangled the year following. Constantine, being by this victory become master of the East, concurred in assembling the Council of Nice in 325, and in 326 wrote to Macarius, bishop of Jerusalem, concerning the building of a most magnificent church upon Mount Calvary. St. Helen, though then 80 years of age, took the charge on herself to see this pious work executed, desiring at the same time to discover the sacred cross on which our Redeemer died. Eusebius, in his Life of Constantine, mentions no other motive of her journey but her desire of adorning the churches and oratories in the holy places, and of relieving the poor in those parts, doubtless out of devotion to the mysteries of our divine Redeemer's sufferings. But Ruffin attributes it to visions, Socrates to admonitions in her sleep, Theophanes to divine warnings, St. Paulinus to her piety, saying that she undertook this journey to find the cross amongst other motives of devotion. And Constantine, in his letter to Macarius, the bishop of Jerusalem, commissions him to make search for it on Mount Golgotha of Calvary. The heap of earth which had been thrown by the pagans on the spot was removed, and the statue of Venus cast down, as St. Paulinus and St. Ambrose relate. Another perplexing difficulty occurred in distinguishing the cross of Christ amongst the three that were found, for the nails found with it were no sufficient proof. The title which lay near it, and doubtless the marks of the nails which had fixed it, furnished an indication, as St. Chrysostom and St. Ambrose mention. Yet some doubt remained to remove which the most wise and divine bishop Macarius, as he is called by Theodoret, who was one of the prelates who had condemned the impiety of Arius at Nice the year before, suggested that a miraculous proof should be asked of God. The pious Empress therefore went, attended by the bishop and others, to the house of a lady of quality who lay very sick in the city. The Empress having made a prayer aloud, recorded by Ruffin, the bishop applied the crosses, and the sick person was restored instantly at the touch of the true cross, as all these historians relate. Solomon, St. Paulinus, and Sulpicius Severus add that a person dead was by the like touch raised to life, but this deserves little notice, being only related upon report, as Solomon expresses it. St. Helen, when she had discovered the Holy Cross, adored not the wood, but the king, him who hung on the wood. She burned with an earnest desire of touching the remedy of immortality. These are the words of St. Ambrose. Part of the cross she recommended to the care of the bishop Macarius, and covered it with a rich silver case, of which the bishop of Jerusalem was the guardian, in which he every year exposed to the adoration of the people, says St. Paulinus, and oftener according to the devotion of pilgrims. She built a most sumptuous church on the spot to receive this precious relic. The other part of the cross she sent to her son, the emperor, at Constantinople, where it was covered and exposed to the veneration of the people with the greatest solemnity. Of the nails, one she put in a bridle, another in a diadem for her son, says St. Ambrose. A third she threw into the Adriatic Gulf in a storm, on which account the sailors entered on that sea as sanctified, with fastings, prayer, and singing hymns to this day, says St. Gregory of Tours. Eusebius, intent on the actions of the son, Constantine in his life, speaks not directly of the discovery of the cross, yet mentions it indirectly in the letter of Constantine to Macarius about building the church, and describes the two magnificent churches which the Empress built, one on Mount Calvary, the other on Mount Olivet. The same historian says, in the sight of all she continually resorted to the church, adorned the sacred buildings with the richest ornaments and embellishments, not passing by the chapels of the meanest towns, appearing amidst the women at prayer in a most humble garment. Suidas adds, she was affable, kind, and charitable to all ranks, but especially to religious persons. To these, says Ruffin, she showed such respect as to serve them at table as if she had been a servant, set the dishes before them, pour them out drink, hold them water to wash their hands. Though the empress of the world and mistress of the empire, she looked upon herself as a servant of the handmaids of Christ. She built a convent for holy virgins at Jerusalem, mentioned by Suidas. Eusebius adds that whilst she traveled over all the East with royal pomp and magnificence, she heaped all kinds of favors both on cities and private persons, particularly on soldiers, the poor, the naked, and those who were condemned to the mines, distributing money, garments, etc., freeing many from oppressions, chains, banishments, and more. She beautified and adorned the city of Depronum in Bithynia in honor of St. Lucian, martyr, so that Constantine caused that city to be called from her Helenopolis. At last, this pious princess returned to Rome, and, perceiving her last hour to approach, gave her son excellent instructions how to govern his empire according to the holy law of God. Then, bidding him and her grandchildren a moving farewell, she expired in their presence in the month of August 328, or according to some, in 326, which year was the 20th of her son's reign, who on that occasion gave magnificent feasts at Rome during 3 months. Constantine ordered her to be interred with the utmost pomp with a stately mausoleum and a porphyry urn, the largest and richest in the world, which is now shown in a gallery belonging to the cloister of the Lateran Basilic. He erected a statue to her memory, together with his own, and a large cross in the middle of a great square in Constantinople. He also erected her statue at Daphne, near Antioch. Her name occurs in the Roman martyrology on the 18th of August, the day of her death. The Holy Empress and the great prince her son paid all possible honors to bishops and pastors of the church. He who truly loves and honors God and religion has a great esteem for whatever belongs to it, consequently respects its ministers. Scandals in pastors, when notorious, are most execrable sacrileges, and circumspection is necessary, that we be not drawn aside or imposed upon by any, because, like Alcimus, they are of the seed of Aaron. But a propensity to censure rashly and detract from those persons who are invested with a sacred character is inconsistent with a religious mind and leads to a revolt. True pastors, indeed, in the spirit of the apostles, far from ever resenting or so much as thinking of any slights that may be put upon their persons, or desiring, much less seeking, any kind of respect, rejoice and please themselves rather in contempt, which in their hearts they sincerely acknowledge to be their only due. Humility is the ornament and the ensign of the sacred order which they hold in the Church of Christ.